Alright, I just wanted to get a quick update in because I have been working on this all day. So I just want to get my thoughts out. It's 10:23. um, and I didn't want to get too far ahead of the videos just because, yeah. So right now, let me go back in time from where I last left off. So you last saw me, I was trying to flesh out my my express routes. Then I went on vacation and now I'm back. Um, so we were in our routes. Essentially, what my thought process was I did not like. Um, I didn't like naked queries like this, just kind of being out on their own, if that makes sense. So I tried to put everything in one big database file, which I'll have to open up GitHub for. Like I said, I deleted everything, so it's not local anymore. Um, and that's fine. So let me go back to the master branch. So basically, I had everything in this initial file here, and this way, the idea was to make it some sort of functional, like you pass in the ID, like let's say get user by ID. So I'll just show you the main one that I got working, which was this guy here. So essentially all you need to do is pass in the user's ID. So let's say that would be 4. And then it would query all of the album favorites where that user has selected that album as a favorite. So it would return, and then this little handy dandy function would just pull out the album's ID. So this would return an array of numbers, just plain numbers. So it'd be like 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, and then I would map over that plain array with this function, which would get a packet or get an object rather of information based on that album's ID. So let's say the album ID is 4. It would then go grab the ID of 4, push it in, and then it would give me back an array of all of the information. So just by grabbing the user's ID, I'd get every single album and the album's information that they are connected to. So this was kind of like the best example of me trying to make it more functional, but really I was trying to reinvent the wheel, and I was doing a poor job of it. So at a certain point, I just decided to go with Sequelize instead of this MySQL package because I was having some issues passing data back and forth. Because I wanted it to be functional. Because, like I said, I didn't want to have these naked queries. So I'd want something like get the ID from the context, get the albums, prep a response and send it back without having to go through all of this weird mumbo jumbo, and then I have to export it and import it. It just felt like a lot of work when Sequelize was already something built, and it's built extremely well for me. It has Mongo-like syntax, but still allowing me to go ahead and still use MySQL as a database. So it's so basically with this you're building the columns first rather than the you're building the tables using the columns rather than using the the rows. So instead of saying create table, row 1 is ID, row 2 is name, you're creating just kind of the perfect column, and then it's going to automatically build it from there. So already that's, a lot more handy than having to do this every single time, especially if I want to break down and build up the database. So some other reasons I decided to go with Sequelize was that it's just more modern JavaScript on the front end. Like, as you can see, this is a more Mongo-like syntax for creating things, because it's very easy for me to drop the entire database and then rebuild it without ever having to hop into MySQL. And that's not to say I won't ever do that, but I don't have to create a database, and that'll also be really, really helpful when I want to test it later on, because then I can build and do stuff, build and destroy very quickly. Also, Sequelize has a ton of smart functions called finders. So like you can find or create, find one, find and count. Lots of cool things already built in there for me, and it's much more well documented than the MySQL package was. So if I ever do run into a roadblock, there's, not only is there abundance of questions all over the internet, there's also a great documentation on there. Another thing too is that it's more object oriented than what I was planning on doing. And the only reason I was doing it the way I was doing it was because I did not know how to make it more object oriented. But Sequelize is doing that for me here by creating these models. Now, obviously, the Sequelize isn't as far as long as the other one was for me, because I spent about half the day realizing I wanted to switch and then figuring out what I wanted to switch to, and decided upon Sequelize. But yeah, so to sum it up, I changed my database, not necessarily the database, but the package used to talk to the database, from MySQL to Sequelize. I did that to increase development time, and this was just kind of me explaining why I did that. But yeah, so tomorrow I'm pretty much planning on working on cleaning up the way data is sent back and forth. So this was kind of cleaning up the way data is talking to the database, and now I'm going to try to tomorrow clean it up how it's getting sent to the front end, and then build out the front end. But ideally, since I did all of this, it'll be really, really easy for React to just say, grab this info, hit this endpoint. The endpoint will give me back the exact info, and it should be real easy, and I think really cool once I get it finished. So yeah, so it should look something like this a little later on. So like I can fill this artist variable just by this quick function, and then it'd be dot then something, or let's say, I don't know, user, let's say albums is like user, be like user dot find one where, or actually it'd be albums live SQL coding, right? It's equal to the albums table dot find one where, and it could just be like I don't know the exact way to do in Sequelize, but it'd just be same favorite query I showed you. Find all the albums that this user has favorited, and then give us back that info. Super, super easy. And then calling it from my express routes should be that simple, because the idea is that the express route isn't doing a lot of logic. It's just routing, getting requests, sending requests, and getting a response, and not doing a ton of logic in of itself. So that's the idea. That's where my head's at. Yeah.